if Bitcoin goes on a tear, it's very likely that price appreciation will go faster than people's ability to build, right? Months or...
And that's when things get interesting for you.
That's when it gets interesting, yeah.
Hey folks, Flo here with Blockchain North at Collision, possibly our latest interview. Sorry, I don't know how that's going to turn out. I'm here with Mike Cohen of Pow.re. How are you doing?
Great, been a busy week.
Yeah, I'm sure. So my first question is crypto dead?
No, certainly not. Blockchain's still ticking. Blocks are still being produced. There's still tons of activity. Up or down, I don't think crypto is ever dead, and I don't think that's in sight. I mean, even regulation has been trying to stifle this industry for over a decade, and there's only more adoption now than there was before. So no, not dead.
Any mega trends that you're tracking that are particularly encouraging for the sector?
Well, ETFs have been nice. I mean, just today, I think Australia has either approved one or will be approving one. And the US ones, the Canadian ones, there's different viewpoints as to whether or not that's good for Bitcoin. But
what's yours?
I don't think it's bad. If you want to self-custody, you should self-custody. But if, overall you want to get exposure to the asset, it's not a bad thing.
And then we have Trump, who wants all Bitcoin mining to happen in the U.S. Which camp are you on that?
Well, I don't think it's possible. So, but it's a nice thought. It's certainly a welcome change to what we've seen from regulatory bodies and from politicians in the past, and even from Trump himself. So, it's becoming, the fact that it's becoming a political issue is also a very good indicator that crypto is not dead. Right? Like, why would they be talking about it if it was?
That's a good point. Yeah, it's becoming, what do they call that? A single issue voting ticket or something like that, yeah. But, okay, couldn't we argue that if the U.S. is sort of back into crypto and with, the might, the firepower that the U.S. has vis-a-vis ours in Canada, that could be for Canada a risk of losing talent, IP, investment?
Canada is always at risk of losing talent and IP and investment, and I think it has more to do with Canadian fiscal policy and that, and I mean, Canada also does a lot to attract that, like subsidies and the rest. But the U.S. is just a bigger market. It's always going to be attracting startups and talent, and I think regulation also. We're always kind of following what happens elsewhere and rarely at the forefront. I mean, we have been in the forefront, for example, with Bitcoin ETFs in Canada. They were approved here and a long time before here than they were in America and elsewhere. But is that enough to justify like Canadian startup and business growth and stuff? I don't know.
The fiscal side of things, the hike in... exactly.
I mean, as a startup founder, one day maybe having to exit, that's certainly something to think about.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has been written on this topic, and probably like more eloquently than I could ever put it, because I'm not a tax lawyer or a CPA or anything like that. But
it's a concern.
It is. It doesn't make life any easier.
No. So, what is your Pow.re elevator pitch in 30 seconds or less?
We're a Bitcoin mining company focused on hash rate production from renewable energy sources. Okay. 100% hydroelectric power.
Based in Quebec?
We have sites in Labrador, a tiny little R&D site in Quebec, and mostly in Paraguay now in South America.
Oh, interesting. Why Paraguay?
Very cheap and renewable energy, and again, talking about jurisdictions, a frankly friendly business climate, welcoming business climate, and we were looking at places to grow mainly because Quebec stifled growth a few years ago. They imposed a moratorium. We had plans to build infrastructure in Quebec. Because that was slowed down, looking elsewhere in Canada, in the U.S., pretty much any jurisdiction under the sun that could fit our bill. But because we had a renewable energy mandate and we had to be cost conscious, Paraguay kind of ticked all those boxes. And when we first went there, we started operating in Paraguay in early 2021, and then later in 2021 there was the China Bitcoin mining ban. There was a massive exodus of miners from China into really every jurisdiction again, many of those same ones that we were contemplating because Quebec was slow. And Paraguay was kind of a blind spot for Chinese miners because of geopolitics, because Paraguay is still one of the few countries that recognizes Taiwan as a country. And so not easy for a Chinese national or Chinese company to travel there, obtain visas, etc. And so they couldn't really do business development in Paraguay, or at least as quickly as we could. And that gave us the edge to set up shop there. And now we have 18 megawatts in operation in Paraguay and another 100 megawatt contract coming online later this year, fingers crossed, or early next at the latest.
So what will it take for Quebec and by extension Canada to, let's say, re-embrace Bitcoin mining and regain its... Because we were, one of the first and one of the biggest.
There was a lot of early growth. And I mean, that's I've been mining since 2013 from Montreal, started in Quebec, joined a company that was also mining at an industrial scale in Quebec. And then, unfortunately, in late 2018, 2019, that moratorium threw a wrench in our gears, and I don't know that it can be salvaged at this point, at least not from Hydro-Quebec. Hydro-Quebec has done a lot done a lot of work, both legally and in general, to make sure that our sector of activity does not come back. However, one sort of glimmer of hope is there's a proposal by Minister Fitzgibbon to deregulate energy sales from private producers. So there's Quebec was for a long time a resource-based economy with pulp and paper, aluminum, forestry, etc. And there's many hydroelectric dams and other generation facilities, generating stations that are owned by private companies. And until recently, until recently, there was never the opportunity for those private energy producers to sell to anybody other than Hydro-Quebec under rates and terms that Hydro-Quebec dictated. And most of those private hydro power plants were set up because there was a need for energy from those private companies. It's like aluminum smelting and forestry, etc., like very energy intensive industries, and they just said we'll build it ourselves.
Especially when they're remote, I suppose.
Remote and lack of grid connection. I mean, that's also another reason why you were obligated to sell to Hydro-Quebec, but you may not have even had the opportunity to sell to Hydro-Quebec because there was no connection to the grid. But this proposal, and I haven't been following the legal aspect of it, but if that does go through, it gives us an opening to go and approach all of these private energy producers and pitch them on a concept that they may have never heard before. And, you were mentioning remoteness. Bitcoin mining as an activity doesn't really have any geographical requirements, especially now you can get the internet over satellite
Starlink
pretty much anywhere. So, we'll co-locate directly where the energy is, and if it's cheap and if the economic case can be made, then it justifies investment, and that's one opportunity where we could grow in Quebec.
Well, I feel like a lot of the reason why Quebec and other parts of the world have been at best reticent and, at worst fiercely opposed to the development of Bitcoin mining or any kind of digital asset mining facilities was around the environment and the big push for, more ESG, let's say responsibility, etc. in the business world. first of all, do you agree with that? And secondly, where are we on this debate right now? Is Bitcoin mining, a problem for our environmental goals, basically?
I mean, it depends what energy source you operate your Bitcoin mine from.
Mm-hmm.
So really, it's a matter of carbon footprint. But it's more than a matter of carbon footprint as well, in the sense that, like, if you have an alternative of two different energy-intensive businesses, you can have Bitcoin mining, or you can have, say, a chemical treatment plant, or a battery factory, or a pulp and paper mill, or any type of other heavy industrial activity that would consume energy at the same scale a Bitcoin miner would. Pretty much all of those sectors have byproducts that are more than just hot air. A Bitcoin mining facility produces hot air and not much else. We're not going to contaminate water. We're not going to contaminate soil. And even our footprint is tiny compared to these other industries, right? Like, if you were to build a chemical treatment plant, that's hundreds of thousands of square feet of warehouse and facility, et cetera. Whereas, for a few megawatts, you can fit a few megawatts worth of mining infrastructure in a few thousand square feet, right? So it's like an order of magnitude smaller. From an environmental standpoint, it's a matter of the business being, responsible and ecologically conscious of the activity that they do. Some businesses are, some aren't in our industry. Like, lots of Bitcoin miners use fossil fuels to generate their hash rate. We don't. And then the other point that I made is just like the alternative, right? Like, if it's us or somebody else, what is the beyond the carbon footprint? What's the other environmental impact that, like, running some big factory will have? Us as a big factory, or really a tiny factory that consumes as much as a big one, we don't have much environmental impact.
What, any plans with Pow.re? Any recent announcements, or maybe upcoming announcements?
We will be launching a product in the coming months, financial tools to help both miners hedge their risk and speculators maybe buy up that risk for upside opportunity on the hash rate, or the hash rate value itself. So kind of the same way that derivatives instruments apply to, say, oil and gas or corn, wheat, etc. All these commodities have revenue uncertainty, right? Like, corn depends on if the weather is good, and the crop yield is fickle. You don't necessarily have the same crop year over year. And one of the ways to de-risk yourself is say, selling your future corn production, maybe at a discount or a premium or whatever, but selling it in advance to have that revenue certainty.
Yeah.
Bitcoin mining has these same problems because you're a physical business with usually fixed costs that are very capital intensive, like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars a month. And your output, Bitcoin, may or may not cover your operating costs. The big thesis around Bitcoin mining, why so many people have gotten involved, is that more often than not, your operating costs are lower than market price, but it's not always true. And so the financial instruments are needed to hedge out that risk, and that's kind of where we're going, offering a product for market venues, exchanges, and brokerages to package this and offer it to people willing to buy up that risk.
Fascinating. What is then the let's say the biggest mega trend or expectation that you have for specifically Bitcoin mining over the coming years?
It's going to grow, I hope. I hope it doesn't grow, and we essentially, as it grows, we make less revenue, right? So we have to grow in lockstep with the network itself.
Yeah.
Difficulty increases, then you make a little bit less. But
as it just did 2 months ago.
Yeah. But I mean, look,
is it still a profitable business?
It is less than, say, 6 months ago, but it's still there's still margins. There's slimmer margins, and we hope that that changes as Bitcoin price appreciates, and really it can become much more profitable if the growth of Bitcoin price is faster than the growth of the Bitcoin network. So,
and you must be modeling that, I'm sure. I mean, it must be an integral part of your business forecasting.
I mean, just in a practical, physical terms, it takes time to build infrastructure, right? And some people are very good at building quickly, and we think we're pretty good at building quickly. But essentially, if Bitcoin goes on a tear, it's very likely that price appreciation will go faster than people's ability to build.
Yeah.
Right? Months or...
And that's when things get interesting for you.
That's when it gets interesting, yeah.
So where do you see the price of Bitcoin by the end of this bull run? Based on your very advanced modeling that you check every day?
I typically don't speculate, but I mean, there's certainly not financial advice, not a financial advisor, but I think, there's a lot of macro factors that are indicating that price will probably go higher than it is today. A U.S. election is one. Interest rate tightening is another. Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful. Knock on wood, but I wouldn't hazard a guess.
So you're not going to give us the number that's in your modeling?
Now.
More than now. Oh, come on. Not even a number. A range.
Maybe more on... So there's two things that we model off of. Obviously, Bitcoin price and hash price. And hash price is kind of a combination of both Bitcoin price and difficulty. I would like our models become a lot easier to deal with when we're in the... say $70 per petahash range instead of the 50-something we're at now.
So you're going to let the viewers do the math on this one. Thank you very much, Mike. Pleasure.
Thank you.